Welcome everyone to another episode of Kiwi Talks. My guest today is an underrated legend who was a technical director on a small series, you may have heard of it, called Grand Theft Auto. He worked on GTA 3, Vice City, San Andreas, and GTA 4. He's now working on his indie game Plentiful. Obbe Vermeij, how you doing?
Very well. Yeah, thanks for having me. Always enjoyed talking about the good old days. So yeah, let's
The
get into
good,
it.
yeah, the good old days. Something I wanted to ask right off the bat is GTA 3 had a design document that was about 5 pages long. How big was the GTA 4 design document? Do you remember?
Um, I think the GTA 3 design document was a little bit longer than that, if I'm not mistaken. But I sort of it didn't affect me all that much. So I kind of read it at the start, and then you just kind of okay, go. And then from that point onwards, like the design document just so the level designers used it a fair bit. So the producer and the level designers, they just kept all their story elements and everything sort of in line. But to the programmers, it didn't really affect us that much. I can remember ever seeing a design document for GTA 4, but it's quite possible it existed.
Yeah, well, I suppose you guys are just focusing on the technical stuff, what's going to work and what's not going to work. Are you there with any of the designers when they're brainstorming stuff that they want to put in the game, and you're telling them, no, that's not possible, or yes, that is possible?
Yeah, so typically at the start of a game, we'd make a big list of all the features that we sort of may or may not pursue. And then we'd have a big meeting. And yes, I'd be part of that meeting. But then, sort of as it sort of trickles down, and the level designers are sort of building their individual missions. That I wasn't typically not really part of that, unless they had code requirements. Then I would sort of be on the loop on that. But let's say maybe I only knew about maybe half the missions by the time the game was finished. So
Really?
the good missions for me were the ones where they just didn't need any new code, so they could do their existing script commands. And then, the coders just didn't have anything to do with those.
Do you remember one specific incident across the whole series that you worked on, um, which just took ages? Or was like really, really hard?
Um, so one I was a little bit involved in was the gang wars in San Andreas. It's not really one mission, but sort of as a gameplay element. And that had like a lot of things connecting. So it had like obviously the regions had to be set up, which was kind of my code, and then the front end had to show the maps, and then had to every time a gang war started, we had to generate all the sort of gang members. So that was my code as well. So basically, it's a mission like that will maybe have like 10 people involved, like maybe a few level designers, a bunch of coders, and then of course a producer. So they ended up just being quite big. But that particular one, I remember talking to the level designer. I think it was Willie Mills, and I was talking like, "Oh, how are you going to trigger these gang wars then, right?" And he was thinking, "Well, we're thinking maybe a menu or a button or something." And then I was working late at night, and I thought, "Well, that's not how you start a gang war. You start a gang war just by getting out of your car and shooting people, right?" So I wrote that in code, and then so showed him to the following day, and he liked it and worked really well. So that's why he just starts shooting, and then so I think I made my code that you had to shoot like three people quickly, and then there was like a little counter, and it started counting down. So if you waited too long, you'd have to maybe shoot three or four. But if you just got out of the car and start blasting away, then you just had killed three people. That triggered the gang wars. And those are the things I actually enjoyed the most, where you could just do a little gameplay thing, and I made something that was a little awkward, and then it just became fun. Um, yeah.
Yeah, well, you've mentioned before how with the earlier GTA's, uh, the gameplay was the focus, and then the story was kind of built around the gameplay, where it was the reverse with GTA 4, right? Where they focused on the story and realism and then tried to cater the gameplay to that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was definitely sort of a transition where at the start, yeah, it was just all about the gameplay. It was particularly GTA 3 and 5. It's like the missions were, kind of silly. They didn't make sense, but it really didn't matter. And often level designers would just have some wacky idea and they'd just try it. And if it was fun, they will find a way to sort of squeeze it in. And by the time GTA 4 came around, this is more driven by New York at that point. They just had their ideas and the character can Nico Bellic can do certain things weren't part of his personality. So the level designers might come and say, "Oh, at this point he's just going to fly a jet plane and blow up a building or whatever," and they would say, "Well, firstly, he's an infantry guy, so he doesn't fly planes, and secondly, we don't know blowing up buildings because it's not realistic. So there's all this stuff that they had, and we just couldn't fit it in the story because the story was so much more important. Which resulted in like it was a really cool story, and I think Nico Bellic's still like my favorite character from the GTA franchise. But yeah, it sort of reduced some of the fun factor.
Well, I suppose with limitations, they do sometimes result in very creative problem solving. So I don't know if that happened or if it was just like we can't do this thing. How do we solve this problem with GTA 4 as opposed to the easier gameplay options, I suppose, with GTA 3, where you could think of something and chuck it in, and if it works, great, you know. Whereas I suppose with
Yeah.
GTA 4, you're going through all these different processes. It has to go through all these different people before it's approved.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah, and to a certain extent, the franchise had to move forward and grow up.
Yeah,
It couldn't just be goofy forever. It had to sort of become more serious. But I think with GTA 5, they struck a better balance where you still had like kind of crazy missions, but at the same time, you still had a story and characters as well. So in my opinion, GTA 4 was maybe restricting the gameplay a little too much. But there's other people that whose favorite GTA game is GTA 4, so who am I to say?
or different strokes for different folks.
Exactly.
Yeah, I suppose you've seen the second GTA 6 trailer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think of it? Because I was very impressed. I was like, how
Oh,
does this
yeah,
run on a PS5? I'm like, geez.
yeah, yeah. It looks absolutely amazing. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I like the characters. I think it seems like an interesting story dynamic between those two, the Jekyll and Hyde thing. I think um, the setting is great. Like the whole Florida man thing is such a good fit for GTA because it's a bit violent, it's a bit over the top. It's very over the top. It suits the game very well. And yeah, it looks absolutely amazing. The graphics look stunning. So yeah, can't wait.
Yeah. Do you think it'll be 30 frames per second, right? There's no way they could run that at 60. You don't think, do you?
I have no idea. If they have to sacrifice the frame rate for stuff on screen, visual fidelity, they will definitely do that. So I would guess it probably will be 30. It's like a curse. We just can't get rid of it. It's everybody saying, "Oh, I'll make it 60 then," but you always get to this point where it's a trade-off between, all right, okay, we'd like if you have 10 characters on screen in the street, it just doesn't look full enough. You have like, I have to have 50, and the price you pay for it is that your frame rate drops a bit. So it would probably be a sensible choice to pick 30, but maybe they have some magic and they can make it 60.
Well, I think casual gamers don't actually really care that much about frame rate. I think it's just really hardcore players, isn't it? Like, obviously, you try and aim for a better frame rate with any game, but as long as it plays well, that's the main thing, I would think.
Yeah, it's a sensible choice. I mean, it's not, so competitive gamers wouldn't be playing GTA anyway. So for casual gamers, they don't really mind if it's 30 hertz, I think.
Yeah. So when you worked on GTA 3, did you know the gravity of what you were working on? Did you know that you were working on something special? Or did it just catch you completely out of left field?
It was completely by surprise. Yeah, so the games before GTA 1 did okay, sold maybe 5 million units, and GTA 2 didn't do so well, maybe between 1 or 2 million. So the franchise wasn't really in itself wasn't really hot at the time. But then, so making it 3D seemed like a really good idea, and everything fell into place really well. So we thought, yeah, this is looking quite good. But then there was an E3 show at the time, and so they showed the game, the last E3 before release, and it didn't do well at all. Like people weren't really interested. People just walked past. There was no interest. It didn't generate a buzz at all. So we thought, all right, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of good games that don't make it big. So yeah, no, we didn't know what was going to happen. And even initially, it sold quite well because Sony put a lot of marketing behind it, but not crazy. But then it just kind of kept selling. Typically, a game sort of dies out after 3 or 4 months in
Yeah.
those days, but it just kind of kept going and going and going. So it was really just only like maybe half a year after it came out that we realized, yeah, it's really big now.
So what was the vibe like at the office, at studio, when it just kept selling and selling?
Um, yeah, it's weird because it kind of felt like it was just a number, really, because it's a different world at the time. It's like you couldn't go on the internet and see all the feedback or whatever.
Yeah,
It didn't
true.
exist yet. So we released the game. So when we were done with it, and then it took about 5 weeks for it to even be in the stores, because there was no online distribution. So by that time, everybody already taken holidays and gone back, and then by the time it did so well, we were already well into Vice City. So it wasn't as snappy as it is right now. So, obviously it was nice to see, and the sales figures, kept looking good. But it wasn't like there was one moment like now, if a game releases like the next day, has it been a success or not, right? You can just look
Yeah.
at the Steam simultaneous users. It wasn't like that at all. It just took 6 months for us to realize, yeah, no, it's actually quite a big success.
Yeah, because by the time San Andreas came out, it was huge, right? And I know you've
Yeah.
spoken about it previously of seeing lines out the door.
Right, yeah. Yeah, by San Andreas, we were confident. Like then at that point, we knew it was going to be huge, right? But GTA 3 was a surprise. And then Vice City, we kind of figured it was going to do quite well. But by the time San Andreas and GTA 4 came around, yeah, we knew they were going to be a big success. The way we looked at it is we could afford one bad game and it's still going to sell well. But we never did a really bad game, in my opinion. But yeah, so we kind of knew then. Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't GTA 3 come out shortly after 9/11? You guys had to make changes to the game because of 9/11, right?
Yeah, we pretty much done with it, and then 9/11 happened. Um, and of course, Rockstar, the headquarters they're in Manhattan, so they actually, they were there when it all happened. So to them, like it was like a massive event. Well, it was a massive event worldwide
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
So there was a little while, maybe a week, that we didn't know where we are still going to release it because maybe it wasn't appropriate. Like so many people had died in New York, and then a game comes out set in New York. But um, yeah, we still went ahead with it, but we did make some changes. So the police cars were changed. I had a little plane flying around that from a certain angle looked like it dove into a building. So I had to lift that path. So basically the testers in New York went through and it sort of looked at all the things that could remind people of 9/11. And we changed all of those and then, yeah, still made the deadline.
That would have been stressful. That would have been a whole amount of crunch, I suppose, around that because of the closed deadline.
Yeah, it was very close. Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit, but it was, nothing compared. I mean, it was such a big world event. The event was like way more shocking than the game. So um, yeah, I mean, it's sort of what we had to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What was your relationship like with the Hauser brothers? Did you have much of a dynamic with them? Because obviously they're in New York, you're in Edinburgh. Um, did you have
Yeah.
much conversation with them?
Oh yeah, sure. So when it started, when we started with GTA 3, a lot happened. Like basically the company just been bought and sold a few times, and Rockstar Games had only just become like its independent label within Take-Two, and they had a bunch of other studios as well, like San Diego and stuff. So they weren't really super hands-on with GTA 3 at the start. It was more Leslie Benzies and Aaron Garbett. They sort of started GTA. They started working on it basically. And then they got more involved at the end of the game and sort of later games. But yeah, Sam was very hands-on. We'd see him maybe every 2 or 3 months. He'd come over, and then Leslie Benzies would go over to New York, and they'd play the game together for a week. Yeah, so it's fun working with those guys. Yeah, we didn't see much of Dan. He just did most of the story stuff, but he just stayed in New York most of the time.
I can't even imagine what it would be like to lead a project like GTA 6 now with how much pressure is on it and how much it needs to succeed and doing all the stuff behind the scenes. They obviously have a great deal of mental fortitude to be able to press through. I don't know if you ever saw that while you were there.
Well, well, most of the game in when I was there, most of the game was managed in Edinburgh at Rockstar North. Like they did like a lot of the publishing stuff, like just PR stuff, but also like story writing, and they helped with animation stuff like that. But like the game was all managed, or mostly managed within Rockstar North. So I mean, it's all down to it's not the case that one person does that everything goes
No,
to one
no,
person. That's not the
no.
case. So the bigger the team is, the more managers you have, the more like competent people take charge over their sort of certain area.
Everything gets
So it's not,
delegated.
yeah, exactly. So I don't think it's yeah, don't think it's much more stressful. Obviously the numbers are bigger. It's like you invest more money and hopefully you make a bigger profit. And if that stuff affects you, then yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's all down to like building a good team, and then the people in the team will just they're the ones that make the game in the end.
Well, what I find interesting is that it's GTA is like a parody of America, but it was predominantly built in Edinburgh.
Yeah, that is weird. Yeah,
So
and
how does
then
that yeah, how does that work? Do a lot of the so did a lot of the devs that worked there, had they spent quite a bit of time in the United States or in New York, for example? Or were you going
no,
off
not at all.
reference
No, that's
footage?
not. Yeah, so yeah, I mean the New York office would send us reference footage, and then but that sort of dynamic was kind of started at GTA 1, I guess, and I mean, I don't think those guys went to the States because there was just no budget for any of that. So it's more like based on sort of yeah, a European's perception of America rather than what an American would see. And that's kind of if you can make a caricature, I guess that's quite a good way to do it. Like, you can't really draw a caricature of yourself, you know what I mean? You have to be kind of have to be an outside observer to do that.
Yeah, I suppose that's true, right? Yeah, because you look at things through a different lens, I suppose, than how an American would perceive, well, America, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting stuff. Um, you coded a lot of the weather effects, the vehicle AI. What else did you do in the game?
So yeah, in GTA 3, it's those things. I did a little bit of the pathfinding for the pedestrians when they were sort of going about. I did all the placement. So as you drive through the city, obviously the game creates like cars and pedestrians ahead of you and then sort of tidies them up behind you. So I did that code. Did a bunch of graphic stuff like the water and did this. I designed the first version of the scripting language. So the level designers have their own language. So they have like script commands like create car, create pedestrians, tell car to go here. So I did the first version of that. Yeah, tons of little bits. So it was a very small team. Maybe had 6 or 7 coders. So everybody was sort of yeah, it was kind of all hands on deck, I guess. Like everybody was doing quite a big chunk of the code. Then later on, that became smaller. But as even with GTA 4, I was still doing the vehicle AI and the placement and removal of vehicles and pedestrians.
I suppose over time, when teams get bigger, and other devs have confirmed this to me, your role becomes a lot more isolated or siloed, right? Because in the GTA 3 days, there would have been a lot of overlapping roles. You'd have your hands in a lot of pies, but then as the team gets bigger, your role gets smaller because it's more isolated, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing I hated, to be honest, because in GTA, I like to do little graphical things. So in GTA 3, I did sort of the clouds and the weather and the wet roads and the traffic lights and all that stuff. But then when we went from PS2 to PS3, the whole graphics architecture completely changed. So now you had shaders instead, and before you didn't have that. So now you had dedicated graphics programmers, and if you're just a generic programmer, you couldn't just go and do some graphic stuff because it was just too complicated, or maybe you'd make the game run slowly or whatever, or but they basically wouldn't let me. So that part sort of disappeared. So everybody does like a smaller and smaller part of the pie, and it's the same for level designers because in GTA 3, one level designer would have had maybe 8 or 10 sort of mainstream missions. And that, of course, became less and less too. So on GTA 5, you maybe, I don't know, you're lucky if you do this sort of elk hunting script or whatever. Like it's everybody just does a smaller part, and every small part becomes more work. So you're still equally busy. It's just you make a smaller part of the game.
Well, yeah, I mean, all the Rockstar studios are just working on GTA 6 now, right? Whereas back in the day, you had multiple studios working on multiple projects because you just all have to work. I mean, I have no idea how it works in terms of all the different time zones and management between Rockstar and Scotland and New York and India. They're all working together across different time zones.
Yeah. No, so at the start, yeah, you're right. We did two games, Manhunt and GTA, and then so after Manhunt was finished, the Manhunt team and the GTA team joined each other, or became one big team. And then with GTA 4, obviously, we got San Diego. They did the engine part, Rage. And yeah, right now they have a studio in India as well. So yeah, it's just getting bigger and bigger.
Well, I think that India is the biggest studio now that they've got. It's like 1,600 people there, which is
Oh,
crazy.
is it?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, I saw like I read the credits of RDR2, and there's like so many Indian names, particularly in like the cutscene editing and stuff like that, and the mocap and all that stuff. So yeah, it's massive.
Well, I've always found that Rockstar are a bit ahead of the curve in regards to this stuff. So they probably were aware of the diminishing returns problem, and building a studio in India is probably a good way of reducing your cost. So, um, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what GTA 6 comes out like. Um, I
My
remember,
prediction is that GTA 6 is the most expensive game
oh,
ever,
100, 100%.
and it will remain that way. That would be my prediction. I think there's not going to be a bigger game than GTA 6 because a lot of that stuff is going to be taken over by AI, whether we want it or not. So I think these banks of artists that are just building like massive maps or massive cutscenes, I think some of that will be so taken over by AI over in the next 5 years or so.
Well, there's no studio either that has the time, the resource, the money that Rockstar has. Like they can spend all that money to build that game. I mean, you remember back in the day there was like Saints Row and Watch Dogs and stuff. I mean, that stuff's largely disappeared because it costs way too much money, and for the money you get back, is it worth it? I mean,
No, absolutely. But my
yeah,
prediction is that GTA 7 will be cheaper to make than GTA 6.
you reckon?
I think so.
Be
It's a
interesting to see.
bold,
Well, we'll have
it's
to
a bold
refer back
prediction.
to this.
Yeah, we'll have to wait 15 years to see if I'm right or not, but because that's
So,
how long these games take these days.
well, yeah, a lot of the cost these days is just art and animation, right? That's the
Yeah,
biggest cost.
exactly. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think like I would imagine that let's say you do a cutscene, you could just all the characters in the cutscene could just be rendered by an AI, including the conversation. If you just describe the scene, that could be your first pass of a cutscene, and you still have artists to do like the tons of artists to do the higher level creative stuff, and there'll be glitches to fix and all that stuff. But I think a bulk of the work is probably going to be replaced.
So, what about programmers? I mean, you're a programmer. What do you think is going to happen to you guys?
Well, it's already like that's basically been already happening for programmers all through the years. Because so when we started GTA 3, an engine was just a rendering part, but the programmers would still write like the physics and the collision detection and animation code, and all that stuff has been sort of removed from the individual projects and it's now part of the engine, right? Whether it's Unity or Unreal or Rage. So there's already tons of work that programmers used to do that's now not being done anymore. So when I started, programmers were about a third of a typical team, and now it's maybe 10, 15%. So it's already happened to programmers. And now with AI, there's still going to be even more work being sort of automated.
Because what I would think is, even if a role is removed or a task within that person's role being removed, it would free them up to maybe do something else that maybe they couldn't do before.
Yeah, maybe. Or what I would love to see is that they just have more games. They would still be high quality ones, but then they'll have maybe different settings because it'd be nice to have niche games with niche topics, like maybe a game about, I don't know, a particular battle in the 1800s, or maybe a game about the life of Einstein, or maybe a game about exploration, space, or whatever. If you can make games cheaper, then you can have more niche settings, and I think that would be much more interesting for gamers. So that would be an optimistic scenario, or it could be what you're saying, that the people that aren't, AI is doing the work of people that can now do more interesting other things. But I don't think AI is going to be doing the creative part. You're still going to have artists sort of setting the style and the look, and you're still going to have writers writing the story. I don't think AI can do that. But there's a lot of sort of yeah, it's a kind of boring work that just artists do now that I think probably AI could do.
Yeah, well, it probably needs to happen in the AAA space, at least, because that's where the decline's happening, right? Because you reach a cutoff point where it's like, well, is this really worth it to invest this much time and effort into something? And if a budget's cost, like if the budget of a game is like $300 million, obviously GTA 6 is way more than that. But on average, if it's $300 million and you have to sell like, I don't know, 20 million units or something crazy just to break even, I'm not sure if it's really worth it.
Yeah, exactly. And nobody's going to take a risk because you can't just, there's no new franchises anymore. Like everybody's just
Yeah.
like, we have the old one, which makes perfect sense. If you're going to invest like hundreds of millions, you want to make sure you do a game that already has a sort of a fan base. So yeah, AAA is a little stale, and I think if games were cheaper to make, that would maybe, could maybe be remedied.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll just have to see as time goes on
Yeah.
whether it's plausible, whether it's
But in the
viable, whether
meantime,
it's
GTA
possible.
6 does look amazing.
Yeah, and it will sell like 20 million units or something first day or something. And they've got the infinite money glitch, which is GTA Online, which just prints money. So I'm sure they'll be
Yeah.
fine. Yeah. Do you recall? Because I remember reading this years ago that I can't remember if it was Dan or Sam Hauser that mentioned that they were inspired a lot by Zelda Ocarina of Time and Super Mario 64 with the early GTAs. Do you remember any discussions or of any kind around that?
Not particularly with them. I mean, I played Ocarina of Time myself, and I did think it was like a nice open world sort of feel where it just had like tons of things you could do, and it felt like the game was progressing even if you're not sort of doing things. But I don't remember Sam or Dan ever mentioning it, but it's possible. It's been a long time.
Well, I did read it, and I am skeptical about stuff I read online, unless I hear it from the horse's mouth. You see, so that's why I thought I'd
I'm sure
ask.
they played it because they played loads of games, so I'm sure they were, they took it on board. Yeah.
Yeah, have you managed to play Mindseye? I know you used to flat with Leslie, didn't you, back
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
day?
So
Yeah.
Leslie was the producer. So actually, the day I started in 1995, so for to work on a game, Space Station Silicon Valley, I met Leslie the day before because he was on the same team, and they put us in a B&B in Dundee. So we were on the same team for that game, and then we shared a flat for a while with two other guys. And then, we're good friends. He was my best man when I got married and everything. He was still obviously there when I left, and then he was sort of kicked out after GTA 5. And then he set up his own studio to make Mindseye, but also a sort of a tool for players to make their own sort of game, sort of a little bit like Roblox and Fortnite Creative. So the idea was that Mindseye would pull people into that world because in Mindseye you can go and sort of at any point you can build your own little sort of game within Mindseye, and then other people can jump in Portal and sort of play that. But yeah, I haven't played it yet. But obviously the reviews say it's awful. So yeah,
Well,
I don't know.
yeah, I think what it looks like to me is they just ran out of money and they had no choice but to release it to bring in some revenue to be able to fix the problems that they probably couldn't. Right? That's what I'm thinking. More
I
than
don't know,
likely.
something like that. Yeah, I just I don't really want to speculate. I just don't know what happened there. But
Yeah,
yeah, I will play it in the next weeks or so. But yeah, the reviews are not good.
yeah, but we live in the age of patches, so it can be fixed. And I've spoken to some Bethesda devs that have talked about Bethesda games in the past, which come out with all these bugs, and they're aware of all the bugs, but they just can't fix them in time because they just don't have the manpower or the time or the resources to do it. I don't know if you ran into any of those problems on GTA. I don't remember GTA having many bugs even back then.
No, you couldn't allow it because you couldn't patch them.
Yeah,
Basically whatever the CD was, that was the game. So no, we would test them thoroughly, and then once we signed it off on like sort of 5 or 6 weeks before release, that was it. So it's complete. The release was completely different in those days. And then people would actually go out take their holidays before the game was even out. which is now obviously
Oh,
crazy because
wow.
everybody's ready to do the day one patch. That didn't
Yeah, of
exist here back
course.
then.
Of course.
Yeah.
Different time. Different time.
But about Mindside, it was interesting because this is like a new franchise, right? Like it didn't exist yet, and it's kind of a
Yeah.
big game. And it is kind of painful because the cutscenes do look amazing, and that's what the reviews all say. And the characters and stuff, it looks really good. But then the gameplay, is sort of a little unfinished or whatever, or broken. And I kind of hate to see it because it just, it looks like it could have been really good, but then it wasn't.
Well, you got to appease investors with these things. They want their money back. That's the unfortunate thing. It's not as simple as just make the game. There's so many. I suppose there's so much bureaucratic stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Um, is that one of the
Yeah,
joys of being an indie? Don't have to worry about
yeah,
that.
absolutely, yeah. But I have to say, like Rockstar Games are always pretty good to us. They let us do our own thing, and we could always hire the people that we felt we needed. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, it's very frustrating if the publisher drives decisions. Oh, we want this, or yeah, the money's gone now. You have to sort of release it. But yeah, indie games don't have that problem at all. They have the problem that they just don't make enough money.
Yeah, well,
There's
that's
just
the
so
hardest thing. Yeah, because you have to
uh,
get eyes on it, right? That's the hardest thing with an indie game, for sure.
yeah, because in a way I love it because anyone can make a game now. I mean, not anyone. It takes like a couple of years to get used to like let's say you use Unity. It takes a couple of years probably to learn Unity. But then anyone can make a game, and it shows there's tons of cool ideas that are that probably wouldn't have passed a sort of a normal sort of publisher or whatever. But somebody just comes up with this idea, makes it, and throws it out there. That part I love, but as a consequence, there are literally like hundreds of games every month and some of them look absolutely amazing. So it's a very competitive space in itself, even more so than AAA, I would say.
Yeah, so you've got your game Plentiful that is releasing in October, is it? Is that still the
It's
aim?
that is the aim, but it may not be realistic. It's just going to be when it's finished. I think realistically, it's probably going to be next year. But I am working on the levels now. Um, yeah, so basically the way this started, I love Populous. That's one of my favorite games, if not my favorite game of all time. And 2 years ago, I played it on an emulator, and I was wondering if it's still fun, and it was still fun. So I thought, yeah, let's see if I can sort of take that as a foundation and then just build upon it. Now, I don't know if you ever played Populous, but it's kind of simple. You make the land flat, so you kind of lift it up and then lower, lift it up, lower. So it's quite repetitive. So I didn't think that was really going to work this day and age. So I made it with blocks, so you can just move blocks on the map. Um, and then so kind of started freestyling from that. So I made some of the blocks mud blocks that can absorb water, and if they absorb water, they become wet. And if once they're wet, they can support plants. So basically, the player builds the map in such a way that maybe you have a nice lake with some muddy banks. You can build all this stuff yourself, and then you can plant trees and vegetables, and you can grow animals like rabbits and fish and ducks, etc. And the whole point of it, all this growing all this food, is you have your tribe of people, and they go around and eat the food. Um, so yeah, so I wrote all that stuff, and I really enjoy it. I think it's just really fun to play. And also, it can be a lot of variety. So every level is going to be completely different. Every level is going to introduce a new element. So there's one with volcanoes. There's one with where the water rises. There's a tide, so you have to sort of build dikes to sort of protect your land. On top of that, there's plagues like volcanoes, earthquakes. There's spiders and locusts and everything. So there's always sort of something going on. Yeah, I think it's going quite well. So I'm now working on the bulk of the levels, so maybe like hopefully get a dozen of levels. I'm aiming for about 10 hours of gameplay. Yeah, there's a demo. The people who do play the demo, they seem to enjoy it. Like the average play time is 51 minutes, which is apparently for a demo is quite good. So yeah, it's going well. I enjoy working on it.
And you're just going to release it on Steam, right? For now, and then you'll focus on consoles later.
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be bogged down with doing multiple versions at the same
Yeah,
time.
fair enough.
And Steam is going to be the main one. So probably Steam, then Steam Deck, then maybe Switch 2 probably, and then maybe the consoles.
Yeah, I was thinking when I saw footage and everything for Plentiful and with the Switch 2 with the mouse control, I was like, oh, this would be perfect for Plentiful.
Right, yeah. It does work with a controller as well. It's got so it runs on a Steam Deck at the moment. So it's quite playable with the controller. But yeah, with the mouse it'd probably be even better. Yeah.
Yeah, because I saw what was it, Civilization 6, 7? One of them. Obviously, you can use the
7.
mouse controls. Yeah, so it would be good stuff. But I suppose one of the problems with indie games is you're always getting ideas, and it never stops. You can just keep adding stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That is a trap. Yeah. So at some point you have to say, okay, that's it, and I'm just gonna polish whatever
I'm
I've got
done.
right now. Yeah.
So are
But
you still in the adding the ideas phase, or are you in the polish phase?
and still adding ideas phase. Yeah. So I would say I probably have about 8 levels, and I'm aiming for about a dozen. And for every level that makes it in, I probably make about two, and then like I just play it, and it just doesn't work, and then I just chuck it out. So I probably get to the point where I say that's it, maybe 2 months from now, and then we polish. But also still need the proper music and everything. So it's not around the corner yet. But yeah, it's a fun game. I think it's hard to pin down. Sometimes people ask me, "Oh, what genre is it?" Because it's got a bit of God game because that's how it started out with Populous.
Well, it's like
But it's got puzzle.
it's a nature simulator, isn't it? Is that what you
Yeah,
call it? I guess.
yeah. Sometimes I call it on Tuesdays I call it a nature sim, and then on Wednesday I call it a puzzler, and then it becomes a God game, and then it becomes a stacker because like tile stacking is a whole genre as well. Some people see it as
Yeah.
a variation of tile stacking. So I don't know. I mean, I didn't really aim for it, and then maybe that's a mistake because so on Steam, so for indie games, it's quite a good strategy to just pick an existing game and just have a twist on it so that people know exactly what it is. Yeah, and I didn't do that at all. So it's kind of difficult to explain to people what it is. But anyway, that's my problem. Yeah.
Well, that's why it's an interactive medium, right? So if you can just show them, it's probably better than telling someone. That's why I've always thought that prototypes are better than like if you're trying to pitch to a publisher, I want to make this game. You're better to just show them a prototype as opposed to a design document, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but the problem is, you kind of have to almost finish it, like do a vertical slice so that you can actually play through. So a prototype is like 50% of the whole game if you want to do it so right. But anyway, I wouldn't do it any other way. I love making games and starting something and not really knowing where the journey is going to end or where it's going to lead. That's that's what I love more than anything. So I will always do like kind of crazy, wacky, goofy games, and then sometimes it doesn't work out, and sometimes it does.
So are you working with anyone else on Plentiful, or is it just you? Just you're the
It's just
alpha
me.
and omega.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everything revolves around you. Yeah.
I can't blame anyone else if it goes wrong.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then for the art, so I use some assets. You can just buy them in the asset store because it's really about the map. It's not really about the characters that much. So all the blocks and stuff, they just I make them myself. But the trees are sort of all generated by code as well, and the plants. But then the animals and the people, they're just sort of standard assets. And I don't, it doesn't in indie games. That's a kind of accepted. That's acceptable. That's okay. Not every team has all the skills. But I am looking for a professional musician because I want the music. So basically, the game has every day is a season. So it goes sort of summer, fall, winter, spring, and every day is different. So I want the music to adapt to that. So I will get a proper musician to do that.
Any ideas? Anyone you have in mind?
I have somebody in mind, but until
You're
there's
not
a
going to
deal, I
share with
can't
me.
tell you.
You can tell me off air, maybe.
uh, yeah, he's interested, but we're haggling about the percentages.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. So it'll be released next year, more than likely. If it's delayed,
Probably.
yeah. It'll
Yeah.
be, yeah. Because you also did a museum app, didn't you? You programmed a museum app of some kind?
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's still active as well. It's called Guide app, and it allows. It's kind of like a social media app, but it's for museums, so they can make a guide. So when visitors come to a museum, they can actually, they have a guide to go through the museum. But it's very difficult for museums to do that. Some of them have built their own app, which is very expensive, or they uses an external office to do it. But Guide App allows people to make it themselves. So they can just upload images, they can upload audio, video, etc., and they just make their own guide. But that's more of a sales problem. So I work with two other people on that, and they're now sort of trying to sell it to museums. Now they're all asking for AI, so that's going to be the next thing somehow, putting AI in it. That's the new buzzword that everybody's talking about. Yeah, so basically, I did that. Before that, I did an educational app called Learnia. So basically, I've sort of moved away from games for a little bit, and then now I've realized that
You came
games is
back
really what, yeah,
to your first
yeah,
love, so to speak.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Do you miss the Rockstar days, or are you kind of like, I'm done? I'm done with these long hours and the intense work and all that stuff. Because a lot of the devs that I've spoken to from multiple studios, as they get older, they just have no desire to return to that sort of development, I suppose, especially in the AAA space.
Yeah, I do miss it a little bit. It was just always really fun to hang out with the guys, guys and girls. It was just a really nice vibe in the office because like we're always really everybody is focused on the same thing, and that's just a really cool, cool atmosphere to be in. Also, Rockstar, the hours weren't actually that crazy as you might expect. So a lot of the people that were there when I left in 2009, they're actually still there
Yeah,
because
still there. Yeah.
yeah, because it is really just a 40-hour week, and you can just combine it with family life. It's not like some of the other studios. I've heard stories, but no, Rockstar North, I think work hours there is crunch time, but it's not like you're not in crunch time all the time. And I don't remember ever working through the weekend when I was there. It was just yeah. I really also don't believe in it. I think certainly as a programmer, if you can actually focus on something for 6 or 8 hours, I think that's quite an achievement. So then there's really no point being in the office for 12 hours. Well, that's my view.
Well, there's probably two different aspects to it because I'd imagine that a programmer would get into a bit of a zone. You could just be in the zone doing your task, and then other times after a certain point, your brain is kind of fried, and you're not really working at your maximum capacity, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So I learned a lesson when we are still working on Space Station Silicon Valley. And we had this demo, and we had to get the demo done the following day. And I worked like all through the night.
Jeez.
And then I went to bed and sort of slept for whatever, and then came back the day after and I looked at my code and there were so many obvious bugs in there. It's like, what was I thinking there? What was I thinking there? Oh, that's not working. So it just doesn't work. Like if you're tired as a programmer, you just make so many mistakes. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that goes for anything. If you don't get enough sleep, then your brain just doesn't work properly, and you'll suffer for it. I had a few questions from my followers for you that maybe you can answer, maybe you cannot, maybe you'll be like, no comment. We'll see how we
Yeah,
go. Yeah.
try me.
Okay. So, all right. This one's from Stefan P-C7B. What were the main differences between developing GTA 4 for the PS3 and Xbox 360?
Right. So previously we'd always the PlayStation, the PS2 had always been the lead platform.
Yeah.
And then in that generation, Sony just kind of kept doing the same thing that they'd always done, which was they designed their hardware and then they didn't worry about software all that much. So all their compilers and all their tools were completely rubbish and was very difficult to work with. Whereas Microsoft had made a big step for the 360 where they kind of focused on the tools more than on the hardware. So
Hmm.
it was way more difficult to work on the PlayStation 3 than the 360. So we swapped there, and so the 360 became the lead platform and the PS3 was kind of behind. And there was a whole team of not a whole team, but like 4 or 5 programmers that were just taking the game code that run perfectly fine on the 360 and then try to squeeze it in the PS3.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard of a lot of developers having problems with the PS3 because of its strange architecture.
Yeah, well, I didn't. I wasn't personally involved, but Yeah, the guys. I heard the stories, and it was difficult. Yeah.
Mm. All right. Next question from Odd Actions, I think the name is. How much is the finished product different from the idea that they begin with?
Yeah. So more and more the same, I guess. So there's less um, room for sort of improvisation. But with GTA 3, I would say it was quite different. Like the whole storyline with Kathleen's betrayal and all that stuff, that just came quite late in the project. That was never there. Um, so the map, we always planned the map out at the start, and that didn't really change that much. But in the early games, like none of the missions were set in stone. That all kind of got sort of moved around, and the contact points were moved around. So yeah, the end game was quite different from what we started with. But then with GTA 4, I would say it was more predictable. It was more like a yeah, we kind of knew what we were making there.
Hmm.
So there's less and less creativity, as the games just have to be better planned now.
Well, yeah, I suppose even if you plan it out, there's still going to be curveballs that just,
Right.
yeah, surprise you. And you're like, oh no. And then you've probably got to factor that into the budget and how much time that's going to take.
Yeah, but like the main things like the story, that just has to be set in stone. That can't really change. You know what I mean? That you can't
Well,
just say,
yeah.
"Oh, actually, we want to, I don't know, we want the main character to be murdered halfway through the game." Like you just can't do that anymore. In the past, you could have done that, but now you just don't have that freedom anymore.
Well, yeah, especially if you've got like all the cutscenes have been done, the voice acting's been done, and then you want to change something, then that's going to have a ripple effect on all that stuff. Geez, that would be
Yeah,
costly. Yeah.
yeah.
Next one here is from the Fair Merchant. What is your favorite career highlight? Favorite project or memorable moment?
Um, yeah. Well, my favorite game was Vice City because actually that's probably my favorite project to work on because it was only 1 year from GTA 3 to Vice, and actually the programmers also did the PC version of GTA 3 in that 1 year, so it was really quick, and still the game felt completely different. Like even though it's 90% the same code and everything, but because of the vibe was different and the artwork was different and music was different, it felt like a completely different game. Um, so that was probably the highlight of my career if I had to pick one. And also, it's just incredible that we did the whole Vice City in the time that GTA 6, is from now till it comes out. It's just mind-boggling how fast it went. So yeah, that's probably it.
Was Vice City always intended to have that long of a development time or that short of a development time?
Yeah, it was always going to be 1 year, and actually, it was meant to be more of an add-on to GTA 3. And then, as we all realized, it really looked like it's a completely different game. It kind of took us by surprise, to be honest. Like we just put some neon here and there and some different music, and I was like, this is completely different now. So then it became its own standalone game. So it was always meant to be like almost like an add-on to GTA 3, and then it just became its own game. But yeah, we always aimed for 1 year, and that was probably also the most stressful project I worked on. And then for San Andreas, we thought, well, let's not do that again. And then we say we'll take 2 years. But then we completely filled it with like all sorts of obscure features that we didn't have to do. So we never really took the easy way out.
Yeah, and I suppose it doesn't matter how long the timeline is in terms of making a game. You're always going to run out of time, so to speak, because there's always more stuff you can put into it or more stuff that you can polish, right?
And if you let developers make their own choices, they will. They will just fill it up with nonsense. So I remember the meeting where we're in with San Andreas. It's like, should we really have stealth missions? We don't really need it, do we? Yeah, we don't really need it, but it would be fun. Let's do it. And we had many meetings like that where we just always went for the more elaborate option.
Well, yeah, San Andreas is considered out of the trilogy, it's considered the best, arguably. Um, and a lot of it has to do, I suppose, with all the stuff that you chucked in
Yeah,
there.
that's
um,
it.
yeah. So this is a final question. This is from Tora says Metroids are pets. What is the most impressive thing working in GTA that the developers managed to pull off that you felt impossible?
Well, that would have to be the streaming in GTA 3. So that wasn't my part. This was Adam Fowler, another programmer. So the streaming is when you move through the city, and the PlayStation 2, it didn't have enough memory to sort of contain the whole city, so you'd have to load the models from disk and then sort of unload them or free them once you move away from them. And that was really quite difficult. And that was one of yeah, maybe the first game that pulled it off properly. And everything hinged on that, because if that hadn't worked, then we just couldn't have the game basically. And that was just weeks before we were done. It still wasn't really working all that well, and we had to do things like so I had sort of somewhat to do with it. We had to do things like slowing the cars down on certain parts of the map where the player could go really fast, and there was buildings on both sides. The buildings couldn't be loaded quickly enough, so eventually you'd just be driving through air, and you still got that. But anyway, that was the problem. So we'd actually have to slow the cars down. So occasionally the artist had to build specific buildings to break up the city, so it was more difficult for the player to go fast. And I actually set up zones to slow the cars down a bit, so you'd have like extra air resistance at certain roads, like big roads where you typically go fast. So that was like a big problem to fix. But yeah, it was mostly Adam Fowler that did all the tough hard work there. So for instance, if you had the CD, if you have models that sit next to each other on the CD, they could be loaded very quickly. But if they were far from each other, then it would take a long time, because the CD would go like slowly if you load things from the far side, and then spin up when the head went to the middle. So you'd have to sort of organize the models in such a way that models that could use together, like let's say they're in the same part of the town, or maybe even vehicles that typically occur in a specific part of town, you'd have to put them close together on the DVD, because otherwise it just couldn't be loaded quickly enough. So that was, of all the technical challenges, that was probably the hardest.
Do you know how much time is spent on it, roughly?
Well, Adam probably spent like maybe a year on it, I think, or just sort of wild guess. And I remember, so at one point he thought he had it done, and then he asked me to. I did the train moving through the city. He asked me to attach the player to the train, and then we'd set up like maybe 5 PS2 dev kits, and then with the player on the train, and then we'd go home, and then he was hoping that he'd come back in the morning and that the games were still running. And the first time he did that, like they all crashed after 5 minutes, and then he would spend a couple of days figuring out what had gone wrong. And then did it again, and then they crashed after 30 minutes, and then they got maybe an hour, and eventually they got it through the night. So that meant that like for the whole night the game was like loading models and unloading, loading models and unloading. And then you have the biggest problem. Well, you probably come across this as well. You've got memory fragmentation, because you have a big block of memory, and you put a model in, another model, and then you free up the first one, and now you have the big block of memory is now split up into smaller parts. So then Adam had to go and move them all to free up like bigger blocks of memory again. So it was a nightmare. And yeah, he got it done.
Wow, that's crazy. He must have come in every morning with anxiety, wondering if it had crashed or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, funny. Cool, man. Well, hey, I'm gonna wrap up there. This has been a huge privilege to talk to you. Now, your game Plentiful. If people want to find any information about it or you, where can they go?
Yeah, the best just go to Plentiful in Steam. You can wishlist or have a look at it, or play the demo. And if people are interested in GTA nostalgia, they can follow me on Twitter. That's just Obbe Vermeij, just my full name. Yeah, it was fun. Like I said, I always enjoy talking about the old times. So thanks for giving me a ring. And yeah,
That's all right. I
my
enjoyed
pleasure.
this. I enjoyed this chat, and just make sure you don't release Plentiful anywhere near GTA 6, and you should be fine. Because
Yeah,
it's gonna suck up all the attention of everything.
I do think we don't really share much in terms of player base, I think. But yeah, well, I guess everybody will be playing GTA 6. So fair
Well,
point. Also.
yeah, I suppose it's just because you can't get eyes on it because everybody's talking about something else, right? So, like, say if IGN, for example, maybe they'd cover Plentiful usually, but because all the focus is on GTA 6 and they can make heaps of money from ad revenue, from doing articles and videos and so forth on GTA 6. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
You might not get the attention that way. Although it might work, you know, because somebody might want to check something out, but I would think it's quite risky.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I'll avoid it. Is it May 26th? Is that right? Is that
Yeah,
still what it is?
unless they delay it again, which is possible. Yeah.
Not
Was
again.
was GTA 4 delayed? I can't remember.
Yeah, GTA 4 was delayed
Yeah.
for about 4 or 5 months, I think. So when that happened, we basically got a free choice of pick the date that we're now going to be aiming for. So obviously we picked it like a little bit longer than we thought we were going to need. So I'm assuming they've done the same thing, right? So my guess is that there's a pretty good chance that it will come out on time, but we'll see.
Well, they're given a specific date, whereas before they didn't. So you'd think they'd hit that date. However, Rockstar, I think, have delayed every single game as far back as I can recall. And they delayed Red Dead Redemption 2 twice, I think. So, but they've got the website and everything. Yeah. So we'll just have to see. Time will tell.
Yeah, I mean they're not going to rush it. It's, you know, this game is going to sell for 10 years, so like they'd be stupid to rush it.
Yeah. Like GTA 7 will be like 15 years, 17 years away, you know. So yeah. Well, Obbie, this has been a huge pleasure. Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening. I look forward to seeing the game when it comes out.
Yeah, all right. Thanks for having me. It was my pleasure.
All right, that is the show, everyone. Make sure you share, like, and subscribe. And until next time, stay safe.